Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I went on a much needed vacation for 2 weeks and I have just returned. And while I did plan to edit this video and also some other videos while I was vacationing, I'm guilty to admit that I didn't. I've not been on a proper vacation in a very long time and I'm so glad that I've gone on this one. It was absolutely amazing and so much needed. Anyhow, this video is not about my vacation, obviously. This video is about card making. Today, we are making arch shaped cards. I've seen this style of card or this card shape all over the internet lately and also in stationery stores. And I really wanted to give this shape a go, give it a try and see if this is something that I might be using over and over again. Of course, we are going to use a die set to create our shaped cards. The one that I have here is called Essential Arches from Spellbinders. It is actually on sale right now as I'm editing this video. It is an older set. It was released probably last year, but I never had the chance to use it. I really liked it. I just never used it. If you don't have this set, you can use a similar one from your stash, but I would recommend you get this one as it is actually one of those essential sets. It's like a set of rectangle dies or a set of circle dies. Those are just basic dies that can be used over and over again. And while this arc shape is pretty much new, I can see myself using it again and again. So this is a nesting set and you get a bunch of different sizes, and I will be using the largest and also the second largest die to create my shaped card bases, and also the 7th and the 8th largest, or I guess if you count from the largest die in, these would be the 7th and the 8th smallest arches. I don't know, I'm confused. Anyhow, if you count from the outside in, use the 7th and the 8th one if you want to recreate these cards exactly. So I'll be using those to create layers for my cards. So I have already done some die cutting and I have one panel that is cut from white cardstock. I used the largest die for this, and this will make the front of my card base after I dry emboss it. I also die cut a panel using Barely Peach cardstock from Spellbinders. This panel will house the sentiment and the focal point for my card. And I also cut a layer of white fun foam using the smaller arch die. I did that to be able to add a solid layer of dimension to my focal point panel. Now you can skip this layer and use foam adhesive or use regular adhesive if you don't like to have a lot of dimension on your cards. But I do, I love dimension, so that's why I have this layer. Now the reason it's not a perfect shape, not a perfect arch, is because I was using some leftover fun foam. So that's why this layer looks particularly wonky. Now, I also have a card base. This is an A2 side folded card base, and I'm going to trim this or cut this using my largest arch die to create the arch shaped card base. And I do this the following way. So I flip my die so that the cut edge is facing up. I position the card base inside the die, and then I use small pieces of double-sided tape. This is the Spellbinders Best Ever Craft Tape, to tape my paper, my card base, to the die. I need to make sure that everything is secured and fastened before I can send it through my die cutting machine to cut to make sure I have that perfect arch shape. Now, notice that the fold of the card doesn't go over the cut line. You want to make sure that the fold does not overlap the card line. This will ensure that you have a card base, a folded card base, instead of just two separate panels. Now, the other cut line has the paper going over it. It's not where the fold is, so that is all good. So secure your paper onto your die and then send it through your die cutting machine to cut. And ta-da! So easy, and I have a perfectly cut arch-shaped card base. Now, I also removed the leftover yellow tape from the back of my card. Now, sometimes it is a little tricky to remove it. You can see that I tore the paper there. It was not supposed to happen, but it did. So I'll cover that up with another panel. It's not a problem. I don't have to throw this panel away. Now, the reason that this happened is because of all of the pressure in the die cutting machine. We added yellow tape not to a single sheet of cardstock, but to a folded card base. So 2 sheets of cardstock. And all of this pressure really pushed the tape into the paper and got it all adhered really well, making it difficult to remove it, and therefore we ripped the paper. Had it been just a single sheet of cardstock, this would not have happened. And now I'm going to use that panel that I had previously cut and was planning to use for the front of my card to cover the back, to cover up that torn section. Okay, moving on. I die cut another arch panel to go on the front of my card, and I'm going to emboss it using a 3D embossing folder from Spellbinders. This is a very pretty floral folder. I just love the tiny flowers here. The design is so beautiful. It is absolutely perfect for clean and simple cards. This is the Flower Frenzy 3D embossing folder. Now, when working with 3D embossing folders, this folder or any other folders, you want to make sure you wet your paper slightly to help the paper fibers stretch. If you do not do this, if you just send dry paper if you put dry paper into your embossing folder and send that through a die cutting machine, you'll end up getting cracks on the paper and it just doesn't look very nice. So what I like to do, I use a wet baby wipe and I wipe the cardstock panel on both front and back to add some moisture to it. It doesn't add too much moisture, but just the right amount. You can also spray your panel with, a water bottle. Use a water mister to spray your panel on both front and back. I do like the baby wipe method a little, more because I have more control over how much water, how much moisture I'm adding to my paper. And I learned this trick from Jennifer McGuire. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so here is the embossed panel. The white on white looks absolutely amazing. It is so dainty and delicate. I just absolutely adore it. I used my Barely Arts glue and I adhered my panel to my arch-shaped card base. Now you can play with different embossing folder designs for your cards. I wanted to use something simple and also something with a small design. So I didn't want to use a giant flower, or a giant leaf. I wanted a small, somewhat random looking element for this card. I also wanted the element to be organic and not geometric. The arch is a geometric shape, but I didn't want to add another geometric shape to it, if you know what I mean. So I didn't want to add any embossed stripes or like embossed dots or embossed rectangles or squares. I wanted to combine the beautiful geometric curve of the arch with a natural organic shape. So the idea for these cards was to have the smaller arch in the center and have that arch house the sentiment and the focal point for my card. If you remember, a few years ago, I shared my perfect card making formula video. So this card is basically an interpretation of that formula, but on a shaped card base. So it is an absolutely simple design, one you can replicate many, many different times using all sorts of different products. So here I have my smaller arch cut from the Barely Peach cardstock from Spellbinders, and I'm going to first add a sentiment. This is going to be a foiled message. You guys know me, I adore hot foil stamping, and I will hot foil a sentiment any chance I have. Now, these sentiments come from the Spellbinders Sentiments for Everyday set, and I'm foiling them in matte gold foil. Nothing changes here in terms of my favorite foil color. Matte gold never fails me, so I tend to use this color the most. Plus, I know I will be adding some die-cut gold accents to my cards, so using gold foil is really a good option here. Now, I used my hinge method to position and secure the glimmer plate at the bottom of my die-cut arch panel, and then I simply followed the Glimmer Hot Foil System instructions, and I foiled my sentiment. And I love this look. The sentiment set is very versatile one. It's a very good one, very robust. You have great messages for all sorts of various occasions, and there are dies included to cut many of these sentiments out. I didn't use the coordinating sentiment dies here, but you do have that option, and the dies come with the glimmer plates. So it's one set, the glimmer plates and the coordinating dies, so you don't have to look for them and shop for them separately. Okay, I have pretty much everything ready for my card except for the actual focal point. I'm creating the focal points for my cards using dies from a new collection from Spellbinders in collaboration with Annie Williams. Annie is a new influencer designer for Spellbinders. This is her debut collection, and it is fabulous. Annie has an introductory blog post on the Spellbinders blog talking more about this collection, sharing what inspired these designs and these images. And I think it is a very beautiful collection. It reminds me of a countryside, of summers in the countryside, very peaceful and very tranquil. So here I use the country wheelbarrow die to create that gorgeous white wheelbarrow. And I also have some pretty fresh picked flowers that were cut using the garden builder dies, also from Annie's collection. I used white wood grain cardstock for the wheelbarrow and also added touches of gold using the Mere Gold cardstock from Spellbinders. And look how beautifully this turned out. I then used my layer of white fun foam to pop up the smaller arc shape on the card base, and I adhered that using glue. Now, I recently got myself a mini T-square ruler, and I can now adhere layers perfectly straight, and I don't have to eyeball and have crooked layers on my cards anymore. So if you don't yet have the T-square ruler, do get one. It's a very handy tool when making cards. Next, I filled my wheelbarrow with flowers and leaves. You can use Annie's die set for this, or you can shop your stash and use any other die cuts you might already own. Floral sets, I mean. Although you can by all means fill the wheelbarrow with other elements, other objects, and Annie has some very cool card ideas and also very cool dies with all sorts of things sitting in the wheelbarrow to make cards for various occasions and also for all the different seasons. So I think the wheelbarrow is probably my favorite die from this collection. It's very versatile. I love it when you can have a die and combine it with many other dies you have in your stash. I didn't have time to do other card examples because I was trying to make these cards before my vacation because, like I said, my plan was to edit this video during my vacation. So I kind of rushed. I think I finished them a day before I left. So I only made 3 cards, but the wheelbarrow is a fantastic die that can be filled with many different elements. It can be filled with gifts. If it's a birthday card, it can be filled with like a fir tree, an ornament if you're making a Christmas card, or it can be filled with like teddy bears or something like that if you're making a card for a kid. So lots and lots of things can be put inside. So here's a look at the arc-shaped cards that I have for you today. I hope you will give this card shape a go. It does seem very unique and modern, and it offers a lot of room to play. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Love you guys, and I will be back soon with more card making videos.